when the Arcturians told me that I was part of their soul group, that I was their family, that they were always looking out for me all throughout my life. After that, I thought, what do I have to be afraid of? There's nothing to be afraid of at this point. The other life changing thing that happened after my visit was before my visit, I would get frequent migraines. And then after my visit with the ETs, the migraines were gone. My husband was the first one that noticed it. He says, "It's been 6 months and you haven't had a migraine." And I said, "I know. I don't know what happened."
Welcome to the Awaken Magazine podcast, where influential conscious leaders come to share the real stories behind their spiritual journey and how they're helping others awaken to love. I'm your host, David Trotter, and today I want to share with you a wonderful conversation with Debbie Solaris. She's an ascension coach and a galactic historian. Now, in this conversation, Debbie shares with us how she was an absolute skeptic who ends up having an out-of-body experience on an ET starship, and this ultimately changed the trajectory of her life. Then she shares with us what the Arcturians on the starship had to say about planet Earth, about religion, and ultimately humanity's awakening. And then she goes deep into the Akashic Records. What are they? How do we access them? And how they can help you understand your soul's journey, not only across lifetimes, but across dimensions. And then I ask her, hey, can you access my Akashic Records? And she says yes, and does it on the spot. You get to listen in. Hey, and if you enjoy spiritual conversations like this that go beyond the surface, I want to encourage you to click subscribe. Whether you're listening on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, or you're watching on YouTube, click subscribe so you don't miss a single interview. We release 2 or 3 every week. All right, you ready? Here we go. Let's dive into this conversation with Debbie Solaris. Well, Debbie, it's great to be with you today. Thanks so much for taking time to hang with us.
Thank you for having me. It's exciting to be part of the Awaken Magazine world. So thank you.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
So I am so excited to talk to you about your backstory. And I know some big things happened to you in 2012. You
Right.
describe yourself as just an ordinary person prior to that point. But
Mhm.
maybe if you could take us back even to your childhood and progress forward, did you have some sort of faith experience or spirituality in your home as you were growing up? Or did that more enter later on?
Honestly, I think it happened later on because I honestly don't recall any like magnificent or really impactful, spiritual event that happened or any, paranormal event that happened as a child. The only thing that I think stands out for me is that there were periods of time in my childhood where uh, there seems to be missing time or I just don't remember. And I'm one of those people that have a memory like a steel trap, like an elephant, um, so that's a little strange, for me to not remember certain events. But other than that, I don't recall anything, spiritual or anything like that in my childhood. So that's why I often refer to, my before contact period as being very ordinary, like I just went through the normal human experiences kind of thing.
Yeah, and I know that it wasn't until you connected with your partner that he
Mm,
began to introduce you to some of these concepts. Maybe
yeah,
walk us through that progression.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So back in 2002, I started dating my now husband, and again, he seems like pretty straight guy, kind of square kind of dude, But as I was dating him, I noticed that he liked to read UFO magazine and paranormal magazine. So this was before the internet got really big, so
Did
he
did that
subscribed to these
did that
magazines.
turn you on or turn you off? Were you kinda like, "Oh, that's hot," or like, "Oh, this is weird?"
I was the latter. This is what is my boo reading? This is weird. I don't believe in this stuff. So I was really resistant and really skeptical of all these stories, and but I was curious, because I was dating him. I wanted to know what he was into, so I started reading a lot of the articles, and I do think in a way, even though I may have not realized it consciously, it did expand my consciousness to where it was starting to open me up to other possibilities. So I do think that was pretty timely, but for a long time I didn't believe in UFOs. I didn't believe in extraterrestrials. I wasn't into all that. And so I, was kind of reading these stories as kind of like a questioning mind, like, is this really real? I don't think so. There must be some logical explanation for, this phenomena, so that's how I saw it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's how
At
I
the
saw
time, what were you doing in terms of your career or vocation? Because oftentimes that really is a strong
it.
lens through
Oh,
which we view the world.
yeah, totally. So just to give people a really brief background on me, I uh, was brought up Roman Catholic, so I come from an Italian American family. Obviously we were Catholic because I think 99% of Italians are Catholic, but um, and I come from a military family, so I was an army brat. We traveled, all around the world to wherever my dad was stationed at the time, and so I also ended up joining the military as a young adult. So I spent 6 years in the U.S. Navy, active duty. My background was mostly a hospital. I was a hospital corpsman, and then I also specialized in what they call preventive medicine, which is basically environmental health. It's basically our industrial hygiene type stuff. So I ended up going to school. So I went, to school as while I was in the military, and I got my bachelor's degree in science. So I spent a lot of years working in the environmental health field. I mean, that was predominantly the field I was in, which was very science based, very I would say patriarchal in a way. And the military obviously is very patriarchal,
Right.
very old school. And then I did work in the IT field here and there, also kind of a male dominated field, so I didn't have any opportunity really to dive deep into spirituality, at least not back then.
Hmm. So you're coming with more of this scientific mindset, thinking through the lens of medicine, health, and your boyfriend, now husband, is introducing you to these concepts.
Hmm.
What was the and I do know you started going to some classes, even some spirituality classes, metaphysical stores. Talk to us about these out of body experiences. What
Oh,
was
absolutely.
happening? When did it happen? Walk us through the whole experience.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to have to give you guys the abridged version of the story because it is quite a detailed story. And I know we only have an hour, and I know you have lots of other questions, um, but pretty much the gist of what happened was, my husband was interested in UFOs and ETs. So, we did go to a couple of meetup groups. Again, I was very skeptical. I just kind of went along because he wanted to go, and never in a million years would I have ever suspected that I would be a person that would be a contactee. I mean, if you were to ask me back then, I would say, "Oh hell no, that's not me. That's not what my life experience is like." Like I said, real ordinary. I never had any special gifts. Growing up, I was just, I was lucky enough to join the military. Got my degree, and I was working in science. So what happened was in 2012, this was like May, June period, 2012. I went to bed as normal, and I honestly believe it was an out of body experience. So I wouldn't say that I was physically brought on board a ship, um, but when I came to consciousness, I was in a different reality. And I knew that it wasn't a dream. I've had lots of dreams throughout my life, even lucid dreams. It was not like a lucid dream. It was very, very real. So when you're in, higher dimensions, things are crystal clear. It's like even more clear than us sitting here talking to each other. You're seeing auras, you're seeing energy, a lot of colors. The details of things is really, really sharp. And so I knew that it wasn't a dream, that I was in some other reality. And as I was looking around, I noticed that, oh, it looks like a starcraft of some sort. But this is unlike any StarCraft I've ever seen because obviously we all grew up watching sci fi movies and sci fi TV shows, and they always depict these ships being very metallic looking like somebody constructed them, put them together. This was like a light ship. It was plasma. It was some sort of material, very light, but it had some structure to it, but very organic at the same time. And I could tell the ship had a consciousness because it was guiding me to a certain room or a certain location. And so I was, following along, just and at the time, a lot of people asked me, like, were you scared? And I said, no, I was just trying to take everything in. I was just trying to figure out what to do next, So I didn't even have time to think about being afraid or, falling into fear. But so I followed down this hallway into this large space. And when I got there, I encountered some, obviously, what were extraterrestrial beings. I've never seen beings like this. And I read, my husband's ET magazines, and, they always talked about gray aliens and, tall whites and mantis beings, but these did not look like anything like that. So I knew I was, encountering some, really different types of beings. And I guess at the point, when I was in this room, there was like 5 or 6 of them. I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 of them. It was hard to tell because these beings are high vibrational. They have really bright auric fields, so it's really hard to just look at them and see exactly what they look like, um, without feeling like you're blinded. So I had to kind of catch glimpses of them through my periphery. So it's just like, oh, okay. And obviously I was trying to get used to being encountering that kind of high vibrations. And I could tell they weren't from Earth. And so I was thinking about questions to ask them, and I was wondering, do they speak English? Because that's my language. And even before I was finishing the question, they were answering my questions telepathically. I mean, they were tuned in. And that's when I knew that something extraordinary was going on. And so obviously I asked them, where am I? Who are you? What is this? Why am I here? Like, why me? And they told me that they were Arcturians from the Arcturus star system in the Bodas constellation. And in this room, they called it the orientation room. It kind of looked like a meeting place, but there was this big holographic sphere. And I was in the sphere with these beings, and they were kind of illustrating some of the concepts they were talking about as they were, telepathically communicating with me. So they were showing me a star map of where Bodas was located and where Arcturus was. And believe me, my mind was blown. I mean, I was just like, wow, and I asked, where am I? And they said, they told me the location of their ship. They said, you're on board one of our starships. We're located between the asteroid belt and Jupiter. We're looking over Earth at this point. And I said, why me? Because I'm nobody special. I'm not. I'm not an ET expert or a UFO person. And they said it was because I was part of their star family. That I had chosen a mission to be on planet Earth, but I had forgotten my mission. And the reason why they called me up when they did was because 2 weeks prior, I had sent a big prayer out to the universe asking for assistance for planet Earth. And I was asking every celestial being I can think of. Like Earth, we're in trouble here on Earth. Earth is in rough shape. We need some help. And I guess they heard my prayer, which is how tuned in these beings are to our overall consciousness. And what was really incredible was that they told me that not only did they hear my prayer, but they were impressed by it. That, hey, she's ready. She's ready. We can talk to her now. And I do think there was a period where maybe I had to indicate that I was willing to be of service to others. So prior to my ET contact experience, I was a animal assisted therapy team. So I did volunteer work for 6 years with my therapy animal. And we did a lot of volunteer work. In those 6 years, just the amount of different programs. So we were working with the American Red Cross, with Fort Carson, which is an Army base in Colorado. We did work with the Wounded Warrior Project and also with fallen heroes' families. And so I think there was kind of a pre-period where I had to prove that I was willing to be of service, even though I didn't realize that was what I was doing. I was just doing it out of just because I wanted to be giving back to my community. And
Mhm.
we did work all throughout Denver and Colorado Springs, so we did a lot of work. With kids, with the military, with elderly people, particularly those suffering from Alzheimer's. And it was me and my little hairless cat, Piglet. And people can read about Piglet on my website. So if you want to hear that whole story, I won't get into it with this interview, but I consider Piglet to be my first spiritual teacher. So that's why I honor her in my website, because if it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at today.
Mm.
So I do believe she was an extraterrestrial being, and embodying a cat body that was teaching me, how to be of service. So I do think that's almost a prerequisite to having contact. Is there's got to be something about you that wants to be of service to humanity.
Mm.
And the Arcturians didn't tell me this. This is just things I figured out, later on as I, uh, you know, uh, um, looked at, my whole experience. But so they showed me around the ship, and they answered a lot of my questions. So I had a lot of questions about what in the heck is going on planet Earth. Why are things so bad? Why is there so much suffering and war and violence? And why is there politics? What's this whole thing with politics and the government? What's religion? The religion thing was interesting because, I was raised Roman Catholic. I wasn't a practicing Catholic, but, I was raised with certain, Christian ideas. And my mind was blown when these, Arcturians told me that religion is a man made construct, that the real connection to God is through spirituality, is through, and we're all God. We're all part of God, we're all soul shards of God, so that just totally blew my mind, because that wasn't what I was taught, in Catholic school, so there was that, they were telling me about government and about things that were going on Earth. I was a very fearful person. So I was a person that, before my experience, I suffered a lot from depression and anxiety. I mean, like clinical. And I'd gone to therapy for a lot of years, even took, medication for a while, to try to combat some of the anxiety, and depression. And I guess I was always fearful, but when the Arcturians told me that I was part of their soul group, that I was their family, that they were always looking out for me all throughout my life, And that not only were they looking out for me, but they were looking out not just for my earth family, my immediate family, but also my spiritual family. So this includes all the star seeds, all the light workers. And after that, I thought, what do I have to be afraid of? There's nothing to be afraid of at this point. So um, I felt like it was life changing. I felt reassured. I just felt like the other life changing thing that happened after my visit was before my visit, I would get frequent migraines. Like ever since childhood, I would get migraines like every 2 months, sometimes to the point where I would have to be admitted to the ER because my migraines were that debilitating. And then after my visit with the ETs, the migraines were gone. My husband was the first one that noticed it. He says, "It's been 6 months and you haven't had a migraine." And I said, "I know. I don't know what happened. Like they must have fixed me. I don't know. Um, but yeah, I didn't have migraines, and I haven't had one since. And it's been, almost 13 years, since that.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah. So
Toward
anyway,
the
I'll let you ask more questions. But
Well, I got a million questions now, but
yeah.
toward the end of your contact there, how did they, send you off? What was the goodbye message, so to speak?
Um, well, they told me I came for a mission, but they didn't tell me what the mission was. I think they wanted me to discover it on my own. And they told me that I was part of their family. So they told me that I came from a long line of Arcturian ambassador historians and scientists. So I was just like, okay, that's interesting. I worked in science for a lot of years, and I know there's some historians in my Earth family, so that's kind of interesting. And but basically, they didn't really tell me what my mission was. They just allowed me the opportunity to explore the starship, to interact with other extraterrestrial beings, including some Pleiadian beings that were also on board the ship. But it was almost like they were allowing me to explore things on my own, which I
Mhm.
did,
Mhm.
afterwards. So I love that you asked that question because I often thought about, the timing of everything. Like the timing was perfect, even though I obviously, I went into this experience totally asleep and then came out of it like a whole different person. Like my whole trajectory of my life completely changed after that. And
My
I know that's
goodness.
not like a common experience for a lot of people, but that was my experience was that,
Yeah.
things had dramatically changed.
Did you physically wake up after this moment and you had immediate like recollection of all of this, or did you wake
Well,
up in the morning, or how did that
yeah,
unfold?
I woke up in the morning, so I was there for at least, I guess 7 or 8 hours our time. I don't know. It felt like I was there when I was there, it felt like I was there for months. I mean, it felt like I was there for a long time. So time works different, I guess, in higher dimensional realms. But
Mhm.
um,
So you wake up.
yeah, I wake up and I knew something extraordinary happened. I mean, I remembered everything and I knew that I was never going to be the same. I mean, I just knew it. And obviously the first person I told was my husband. And he didn't believe me at first. He thought I was having some sort of crazy dream. Now he believes me. He's been on this journey with me.
Sure.
But I didn't tell many people because I was afraid I was going to be ridiculed, called crazy, put in the loony bin. I already went through all that, therapy stuff. I was, I didn't tell many people, but I immediately knew that I had to get some information. Like I needed to learn some things. You had asked, how did I transition into spirituality? I just wanted to figure out what the heck happened to me. So I started taking every single spiritual class I can get my hands on, either online or in person, a lot of in person stuff because I live in Colorado. As you know, we're kind of we're Starseed Central, here in Colorado, So we have spiritual offerings out the wazoo, here. So anything I wanted to learn, I could probably, find somebody that was teaching it. And so I took a lot of classes in Colorado Springs, and then when I moved to Castle Rock, I took a lot of courses here, and the Denver, the greater Denver metro area. And I was like a sponge, and it was not just classes. I was also researching online, so I was doing all this, reading books, researching online, because at the same time I was getting downloads. Like it was almost nightly for a while. I was getting downloads of galactic information, where I was start all of a sudden I knew all these star systems, their history, the people that lived there, what how they were connected to each other.
Had
uh,
you read and researched about them, or it just the knowledge was within you?
it was within me at first, so I was just getting downloads, and I was just like, how do I know all these star systems? And I thought I was going crazy at first. I thought, okay, I'm losing it. I've never, heard of this stuff. But it was so frequent that I figured there must have been something truthful or real about it. So then I started doing all the research and reading all the books, because I was just looking for confirmation. Like, okay, um, is there information on this out there? And I was discovering that, oh, Dolores Cannon has been writing about this stuff, and Lissa Royale Holt wrote about the Lyran Wars, and Alex Collier was talking about Andromedan contact, and about some of the history that happened in planet Earth. And Stuart Swedlow was also writing books, and so there was a lot of books out there, but it kind of seemed like everybody had like a piece of the story, but not the whole story, So I always took it upon myself, like I want to know the whole story from beginning to end, and how everything connects to each other. So I'm currently working on a book where I'm doing just that. So I'm doing like the whole galactic history and theory and anthology kind of thing. But yeah, I just feel like there was a large part of who we are as humans that has been hidden from us. And I didn't start off being an Akashic Records reader. So a lot of people think, oh, yeah, Debbie's been reading records forever. It's like, no, I was just a spiritual seeker for a long time.
Mhm.
So I wasn't necessarily, oh, I'm going to, do little readings and, make money at it. I just kind of stumbled upon Akashic Records. And that was a story in itself. I was just like, taking Reiki classes in Castle Rock, so I was taking Reiki classes. I was having a conversation with my Reiki teacher, and I told her, I'm getting these nightly downloads, and I'm seeing all these galactic wars, and I'm seeing, all the history of all these star systems. What's going on? And she said, sounds like you're getting information from the Akashic Records. And I had never heard about the records. I didn't know what they were. And so I asked her, what are the records? And so she told me, and she says, I teach how to read the records here in my studio. And I said, are you serious? I said, I got to take these classes, so I started taking Akashic reading 101 or level 1, and I discovered I had a knack for it. Like I had like instant connection. Like didn't I mean it was like some people they have to really practice, like they
Yeah.
practice and practice. Me, it was instantaneous. I would get downloads about different people, different things.
For
And
people
so
who aren't familiar with Akashic Records,
yeah,
just real quick, how would you define those? Is there any difference between even galactic versus earthly Akashic Records? Help us
yeah,
understand that real briefly.
yeah. Oh yeah, I'm happy to do that. So the Akashic Records is the energetic records of the universe. So it's not like a library, it's more like an energetic space in the higher dimensions. And all of us are contributing to the Akashic Records. So they have records on every single being on in the universe, and even beyond, because I've been able to access records in other universes, freaking amazing. When you see something that's not from your universe, and you're just like, wow, okay, this is different. But they're basically the energetic records of anything that's ever happened, every thought, every emotion, every feeling, every experience. And everybody has access to this, so you don't have to have like a special ability or a special passcode. All of us have the ability to access the Akashic records. The Bible even talks about the Akashic records. So I was, brought up Catholic, and then I went to a Christian university, so I had to take Bible classes as part of my prerequisites. And I remember, taking Old Testament courses, and they were talking about the Book of Life, and even I think the New Testament mentions the Book of Life.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember even back then thinking, wow, wouldn't it be amazing to be able to access the Book of Life and change people's lives?
Hmm.
And I didn't even realize what I was thinking back then. I just thought it
Hmm.
would be, I always thought that was fascinating that there was a place that you can get download information about everything.
And why
And
would we want to access the Akashic records? What's the benefit there?
yeah, I'll answer your question about the difference between the galactic and Earth, and then we'll
Yeah,
answer that
yeah.
question. Yeah, so there's really not much difference between Earth records and galactic records. So Akashic records are the Akashic records. It's just that I think for a long time our consciousness was limited here on Earth, so people were only accessing Earth records for a long time. But now, as our consciousness has expanded, we're embracing the idea of being part of a galactic, family out there. We're, embracing the idea that we came from different star systems and different dimensions. So now our consciousness has expanded to be able to access the galactic records because now we're understanding what we're connecting with. And that's a lot of what I teach in my Akashic classes. So how do we connect with those Akashic records? How do we understand what we're seeing? Because obviously it's going to be really different than Earth records. And then the question you just asked was,
Just what is the benefit? Like, why
oh
would we
yeah,
want to tap into the Akashic records?
uh, for a lot of people, it's life changing. It's life changing, and the reason for that is because I think here on Earth we go through this veil of forgetfulness. So we choose to be incarnated here, and we're in the third dimension, which is a very dense dimension compared to other star systems and other realities. So we forget everything. But when we tap into the Akashic records, we start tapping back into our soul memories, our soul journeys, our experiences, who we were in prior lifetimes, alternate dimensions, even future probabilities. So that really helps people get aligned with who they truly are and also what they came here to experience and do. So for a lot of my clients, it's very life changing.
Mhm.
It I think realigns them with who they truly are as a divine child of the universe. As a a a conscious vessel of source. Of source frequency. So it connects them with something beyond just this earth experience. And I think, for a lot of folks, that could be illuminating for them. And
Mhm.
it's why I'm so passionate about this work and why I want to teach other people to do it because it changes lives. I've had, I mean, I don't even want to get into, all the different examples, but there's just a lot of examples of people that after they had a reading, things changed for them, for the better. They became more aligned, and maybe some of them started doing different types of work, or they changed. They ended up moving someplace different. So there's story after story on that. But
Yeah.
that's the reason why it's so important, and I think it's also
Nice.
important to understand our history beyond Earth too.
Hmm. I want to backtrack
Okay.
just a bit before we talk about the actual process of reading the Akashic records, because
Yeah.
I'm curious about that. But how did you make the transition from environmental
Health
medicine and
specialist.
health, yeah, to doing, spiritual work, being a guide, reading the Akashic records kind of as your full-time focus, because so many of the people that listen to our show and watch our show are in that process of going,
Oh,
gosh,
totally. Yeah.
I have gifts and I want to do this as my main vocation, but how did that play out for you personally?
It wasn't an easy transition. I'll just say that it was. So when I was starting to do, so I started doing Akashic Records readings. A lot of mostly on in person at first. A lot of local people came to me at first, and then my reputation just really expanded. And then I was starting to do a lot of remote sessions. But initially, I was just doing it as a hobby. So it's just kind of like, hey, I got my regular job at the county health department. I'm an environmental health specialist, but I don't get paid much. So this is a nice little, supplement to my income. And I was saving my money. And I'll tell you what I ended up using that money for. But so I was saving up all my Akashic reading proceeds, but it was difficult. I got sick because I was trying to live two different lives. So during the day, I was doing my 9 to 5 job, being, out there, doing health inspections, that sort of thing. And then at night, I was the Akashic reader, so I was, doing readings. And I did a lot of readings back then because, and I was starting to get physically ill. So I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2016, and then had to recover from that. Went back to Akashic reading, and after my breast cancer recovery period, I told my husband I can't do both anymore. I got to choose one or the other, and he was really against me leaving the health department because I was so close to retirement. I think I had like 2 or 3 years left, and he wanted me to retire, to get my full retirement benefits, and so I hung in there for another 3 years. I mean, going through one illness after another, and I thought, if I keep doing this, I'm going to die. I'm going to keel over and die. And so I had this crazy idea. So I went to the retirement department at the county and said, what does it take for me to retire early? Because I'm trying to make my husband happy and also get the heck out of Dodge, heck out of the matrix, So they told me, well, you can purchase time, so we have a, program where you can purchase time. So I was like, how much money do I need to purchase 2 years? And they told me $20,000. So I took everything out of my bank account and said, "Here's your $20,000. I want to retire early with my full retirement benefits." And so I retired in March 2019. And thank God I retired when I did because it was right before the pandemic.
Oh my
So can
goodness.
you imagine working at the health department and being part of COVID? I mean, that would have been insane. I would have definitely keeled over and died then, but I did it for self-preservation, and the whole story behind my Debbie Solaris name, it's not my real name. I think a lot of people know that, but the reason why I took that name on was because I was doing side gigs, doing readings, and I was still working at the health department, and I didn't want my managers knowing I did this woo-woo stuff,
Yeah.
because they're very conservative, and I was already on thin ice with them a lot of times, so they already thought I was weird. So I was like, I don't need them to think I'm even more weird, So I went with the name Debbie Solaris. It's just based on my astrology chart, So I'm a sun sign Leo, so somebody suggested Solaris. And I thought, it has a nice ring to it, and it kind of stuck, so that's why I came up with that name. And I think a lot of people are in that position where they're trying to straddle their spiritual path with their 3D matrix job. And sometimes it's like being on a tightrope. That's how I felt. I felt like I was on this tightrope, like I had to be careful not to let people know that, oh yeah, I did all this, these readings, and I was doing all these presentations, in the Front Range of Colorado, on extraterrestrial, galactic history, that kind of stuff. But it was hard to manage that. And that's why I retired early. And what was interesting was 6 months after I retired, Gaia TV reached out to me and said, hey, we'd love to have you on Beyond Belief. And I was like, wow, the universe is really lining up here, There, it's kind of like I made that leap, so now I was getting the benefit of it, so so my I was on Gaia TV in June 2020. I think the show aired in October of the same year, and then things just blew up after that, So that was, the rest is history, as they say. So
Yeah,
yeah.
wonderful, wonderful. I want to now circle back to the actual experience of an Akashic reading. I have not had one
Okay.
before. And
Okay.
so I'm curious, and for those who perhaps just not had one with you, what
Yeah.
is that like? And I know you you're not doing one-on-one Akashic readings anymore. Is that correct? You're
No, I
focusing
still
on
do
training
them.
others? You
No,
still do?
I still do one-on-ones. I just can't
Okay.
take new clients because I have 3,000 over 3,000 people on my wait list. I I just, I'm not taking new names, but we are sticking with the list.
Yes.
I just don't do as many because now I'm a public figure and I'm having to do all these events and
Sure, sure.
conferences. But yeah, no, I still do the one-on-ones,
Well,
yeah.
I know one of the big focuses of your life is training others to
Mm,
provide
yeah,
readings as
totally.
well, and you have a whole list on your website of people that are certified through your program, which
Yeah.
is wonderful.
Yeah.
And so we'll obviously link to that. But I'm just curious about an Akashic reading,
Mhm.
um, and what it's like, what I could expect.
Mhm.
Tell me all about it.
Oh, yeah, yeah, so this is just my method of doing it, so my method might be different than other Akashic readers, but, so I was trained, with Dr. Linda Howe's method, so that's what I use. It's very Christian or oriented, but it works for me and it works for a lot of people, so that's a method I use, but there's alternate Akashic prayers you can use that are more metaphysical, if you wanna call it that. So I use Howe's method. When a client comes to me, I always ask for their full name and their birth date. It has nothing to do with astrology. It's more to link to their records, So I'm not using astrology or numerology or anything like that. It's just a link to their specific records. So I always do a column of light exercise. So I'm always connecting with the higher realms. So I'm connecting myself with the heavens and with planet Earth, and I'm the conduit to the Akashic records. And then when I get on the line with my client, whether I'm working with them in person or on Zoom, I always do a divine heart triangle. So I'm connecting my heart chakra with theirs. We're connecting with source energy. And I always do a little space clearing. And the reason why I do the heart triangle is to read their auric field. So I have the ability to read their field. And it's just maybe that, to check in on what's happening with them or what star systems they're connected with. But I always confirm that with the records. So I do a little space clearing, then I do the pathway prayer process. I'll say the records are now open, and it's with me, it's kinda like a click. Like, I feel like this click in my head, like, "Okay, I'm connected." Click, and I'm getting, like, downloads. So, people ask, what clairs do you use to access the records? And I will say all of them. You're using all of them. So you're clairaudient, you're clairvoyant, you're clairsentient, clairgustance. I mean, sometimes you'll smell smells, you'll hear music. I mean, it's amazing. It's like a multi-layered clair experience. But with me, it's almost like I'm grabbing that client's movie, like I'm renting their Netflix movie and I'm watching their whole story. So I'm very visual, so I'll see things like a movie and I'm describing what I'm seeing to them. And it might be usually I like to start off from this very beginning when their soul had its first individual inception. So it might even be before their physical incarnations. So when their soul either separated from source or their soul was part of this oversoul group. So I'll explain that to them. Then I'll explain why they chose the different star systems they chose, if they're a star seed. Sometimes I do readings for some people that aren't star seeds, but if most people that come to me are star seeds. So
And if you're not a star seed, you did not have a previous galactic life experience. Earth was your first incarnation.
yeah, you're a younger soul usually, and you just had incarnations on Earth. And I have done readings for some folks that are Earth souls, and
Mhm.
they usually know they're Earth souls. They're not ashamed of it or sad. They're like, I know I'm an Earth soul, and they embrace it, and I'm like, great, let's explore some of your Earth lives, So
Wow.
yeah, so I've
And
had clients like that. Yeah.
how long is this experience? Like, how long does it take you in order to get connected and begin describing what you see?
Usually it's pretty immediate. So I just go through the pathway prayer more as a ritual for my client.
Mhm.
But usually if once I get, their birth date and their name, I can click on almost immediate. And it's like the download just happens immediately for me anyway. And then I'm just channeling. I'm just channeling everything I'm seeing, So
I know this is a crazy I didn't even like, would you be willing to do that with me right here? Would that like, would you be open to that? Or does that feel like, let's do that some other time?
Um, I don't know if we have much time. That's the only thing I'm concerned about, but,
I've got some extra time. I've
oh,
got
okay,
until I got another 40 minutes,
okay.
but
Well,
unless you
all
need
I
to
need
get
is
off.
your full name and birth date, so let's do it.
Sometimes I ask people who are channels to channel, and I'm like,
Yeah,
"Oh my gosh, if this is that instantaneous for you, so
yeah,
fascinating."
it's pretty instantaneous for me,
Yeah.
and
So,
yeah,
my full name is, John, John, David
okay,
Trotter, Trotter,
okay, and what's your birth date?
February 25th,
Okay,
1973.
alright.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll go through the whole regular Akashic process like I would with any client.
Yeah.
We'll probably just do like 10 minutes in the records. Does that sound
Yeah, whatever.
adequate?
I want people to experience this because I know you have trained, and we'll talk about this in just a
Yeah,
moment.
yeah.
But your program is called the Galactic Akashic Records. It's a
Read.
6-week training program. It actually starts September 8th, 2025. You do it
Yeah,
once a year. So I want people to be able to sign up for that, and then you have people who are certified in your program on your website.
right. Yeah.
So
So we have a directory of all of my graduates,
yeah,
our ARC graduates, and most of them are doing their own Akashic readings, so they're doing their own practice,
yeah.
uh,
So I
and
want
they're great, so if people can't get a reading with me, they can get a reading with one of
right
my
somebody who
students.
you've trained
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
So let me go through the whole Akashic process. So I'm going to tune in.
Mhm.
Only the highest vibrations of love and light can be in this space and all objects in this space for the highest good of John, David Trotter, and myself. For this reading today, all other energies must leave now. I call in the highest level of the divine that knows that love is the power and the truth from which we read the highest level guides and angels of John, David Trotter, and myself to help us with this reading. Archangel Michael, hold this space for us, and so it is. And so we do acknowledge the forces of light, asking for guidance, direction, and courage to know the truth, as it is revealed for our highest good, and the highest good of everyone connected to us. O Holy Spirit of God, help me to know John David Trotter in the light of the Akashic Records, to see John David Trotter through the eyes of the Lords of the Records, and enable me to share the wisdom and compassion that the masters, teachers, and loved ones have for John David Trotter. Okay, the records are now open. So when I was connecting my heart chakra with yours, I saw this bright, bright light. And what I immediately got was you're very connected with Galactic Center. So Galactic Center is actually located between uh, Scorpio and Sagittarius in our galaxy. And I do think you originally came from a galactic council out of the star system of Altair. So Altair is not a star system that a lot of people are aware of, but it was an important navigation star, to the ancient people. It's actually located in the Aquila constellation, uh, which is the constellation that is the Eagle constellation. So it's located, just south of Lyra. So very close to Galactic Center. Now, is that your origination point? Most likely not. I think most of us came from Andromeda galaxy at some point. So I'm just seeing this Altair as a place that as an etheric soul, you were part of a council. And part of your mission from this council, and we'll get into some of your physical incarnations also, because I saw some star systems pop up immediately with you, um, but part of your particular council, I would say mission was to integrate spirituality. So you're actually a very divine feminine soul. There's a reason why you were born a Pisces, because you're very divine feminine. You're here. You're mostly spirituality and healing. You're not so much technology driven. So I get some souls that are all about the masculine energy. With you, I mean, don't get me wrong, you're a very masculine man. I'm not trying to say you're effeminate. Okay, I'm not even saying that at all. I'm just saying that you carry a divine feminine essence, so you're more of the divine feminine mother goddess consciousness, in other words. So in our particular universe, there's a father god consciousness and a mother goddess consciousness, and you're more part of the mother goddess consciousness. So you're actually aligned with the angelic realm and with what we know as the Elohim. I'm trying to see what color ray you're associated with, and I want to say you're with the blue ray, or the kind of violet blue ray beings, which um, I'll have to look that up and see what beings or what angels are associated with those color rays. But I don't know if blue or violet's like favorite colors of yours, but I am, seeing that in your auric field. And I at some point you decided that uh, so you were this light being, so you didn't have a physical form yet. You were just like a consciousness, and I think you were happy being a consciousness, but at some point I think you wanted to get more involved with this experiment of separating from source. So all of us here in this galaxy, in this universe, we're all going through this experience of separating from source, which is why a lot of us are on planet Earth right now. And so you wanted to have a more direct impact on that. So you weren't satisfied being in your ivory towers in Altair anymore. So you wanted to see what it was like to be physical. So I do see incarnations in the Lyra system, mostly to be kind of a guide and a teacher. So I see this desire to be. So you've always, I think, been very ingrained in spirituality, and I want to say that your first experience was more in the Vega star system, which is very aligned with Mother Goddess consciousness. And these beings were blue skinned beings. They were humans, but they were different than the White Lyrans. The White Lyrans had more of a Father God consciousness. They were more physical. They were agricultural people. You were studying, spirituality. And I know you were a prior, I think, pastor at one time in this life, so I do think you've always been on this spiritual path for millennia. And you started off in Vega, so I'm seeing this connection with the Vega system. And then looking at your records, you were in Vega for a while until the Lyran Wars. I do think you were able to escape the war, so you were one of the lucky ones that was able to get evacuated. But there was a lot of trauma around it, so it wasn't like, oh yeah, I just jump on board a starship and I head to Sirius. You were it was traumatic. You lost family members. Entire worlds were destroyed. So there's some trauma signatures around loss, around abandonment, around having to start over for you. And that's what I'm seeing was part of your experience during the Lyran Wars. But you were fortunate to survive, and you ended up in the star system of Sirius. So I would say you're predominantly Lyran Syrian, but I do think you had some incarnations also in the Pleiades. So you're but I would say your genetics are mostly humanoid. So I do think you took on the human experience, regardless of what star system you were in. Um, I'm going to look at Sirius a little bit, and then I'll close out the records just because we're kind of limited on time here. But one of these days we'll have to do a full reading for you. But and we'll arrange something like that for you. Um, but I do see Syrian incarnations very much connected with the Syrian mystery schools. So you were one of the original. I don't know if you were a teacher also in this life. Did you do a lot of teaching or
In
uh
this life?
yeah, in this life, yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So because I see not only were you a student at the mystery schools, you were also teaching at the mystery schools. You're very aligned with ascended masters, particularly Saint Germain, Sanat Kumara, Hilarion is the other one, and Kathumi is another one you're very connected with. If people don't know who Kathumi is, he is the being that incarnated as Saint Francis of Assisi on planet Earth, among other incarnations. But so you're very aligned with those beings, along with some angelic beings, mostly very divine feminine beings. Actually, it's very interesting, like Archangel Ariel and Haniel, Raphael. So very aligned with those beings. Your mission, the reason why, and you had like a lot of incarnations in Sirius and the Pleiades, so I kind of see crossovers between those two star systems. The reason why you came to Earth was this is part of your overall soul mission. Your mission is to integrate spirituality into every civilization, every collective that you have the great joy of being of service to. So I think that's what you're trying to do with Awaken Magazine. Maybe why you transitioned to this, more expansive form of spirituality, from the prior work you were doing. It's order to reach more souls, actually. And and this is what you've been doing for millennia. So your mission actually is to integrate spirituality in this very physical, very, I would say, materialistic world that we live in, where everything's really static. If you don't, people believe if you don't see it, it doesn't exist, and you're trying to show them that there's a lot more to it. You do have this. It's interesting you chose to be born as a Pisces because you do have this Pisces connection with the 12th house. So the 12th house is all about the deep mysteries, the deep dive into the subconscious. So there's almost a quality to you that's even more like a counselor or a coach, that you love to guide people as well, on their own journeys. And but then you're also doing this very public work of sharing information. So I'm going to close here if that's
Yeah,
okay, and
yeah,
then
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
going to do the closing prayer because we always want to shut the records. You
Yeah,
don't ever not want to shut the records, and I'll explain a while afterwards.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, we want to shut the records. So let me do the closing prayer. So I would like to thank the masters, teachers, and loved ones for their love and compassion. I would like to thank the lords of the records for their point of view. And I would like to thank the Holy Spirit of light for all knowledge and healing. The records are not closed. Amen. The records are not closed. Amen. The records are not closed. Amen. Your energy goes with you, and my energy stays with me. So, what did you think of all of that? Was that mind blowing? I don't know, maybe, but
Yeah, so fascinating.
yeah.
So one of the things that's unique, or that was interesting to me was your eyes are open for much of the time.
Hmm.
And are they always open? Yeah, there's this connection that's happening. Like, how does that
Yeah,
work for you?
it just dump I just get this brain dump. So, sometimes I do close my eyes, like, if I'm trying to zero in on an image or if I'm trying to connect with something, I'll close my eyes, but, yeah, it's like a brain dump. It's like a channeling. It's just like it just comes out,
So
so,
fascinating.
yeah.
And so, how would you? And I know I love this because I'm just getting a little taste of what you do.
Mhm.
Um, how would you then guide me or coach me on what do I do with this information now? Like, how does this help me? Obviously, it expands my, idea of like my
Right.
experience on Earth. But like, what would you suggest as a client of yours? How do I navigate this information?
Yeah, totally. Well, it depends on the client, because like some of my clients, they've been on the spiritual path for a while, so they're like totally tuned in. They take the information and they go running with it. Other clients need a little more guidance. So I do offer like little classes on my website. These are prior webinars we've done. That people can connect with, and they're low cost. I think the most expensive one's like $66, but just on different aspects of starseed life, and if you are connected with that. And a lot of times, I might make recommendations to my clients. I might say, you might want to consider taking this spiritual class, or maybe looking into this direction, or maybe exploring this, or maybe attending some retreats, connecting with other people of like-minded journeys. I'm always making recommendations to my clients, because I guess there's a part of me that I wish somebody would have done that for me. I had to figure everything out on my own. So I like helping people out that way. I don't coach per se, but I just like, giving them like something to take that information.
Mm,
But some of my clients, they are in tuned. They just need that confirmation, or they need, maybe more information, and then they kind of just do their thing.
mm.
So it just depends on the client. But
Sure, sure.
yeah, interesting
Wonderful.
question though. Yeah.
So, one of the things that I want to make sure people know about is on your website, you have a whole section called Galactic History,
Hmm.
and it is all about the different lineages and star systems. And, it's just a great reference tool. It's
Yeah.
very, very powerful. Um, I am curious about a couple of different. Um, I guess lineages would be the right way to describe it.
Hmm.
You share on your website that the Arcturians are more like spiritual guardians who
Hmm.
defend Earth. And so I'm curious about how you see their role on Earth. Um, and then I have a follow up question regarding Draconians.
Hmm.
So maybe help us understand Arcturians just briefly.
Okay. So Arcturians are one of the few star groups that had their own consciousness. So they weren't part of the Lyra Vega soul group. So a lot of these other star systems are descendants of Lyran and Vegan refugees that escaped the wars. But the Arcturians always had their own consciousness, so they were always set aside to be, uh, they were a Stargate, so so they were the Stargate of souls. So that's where souls are processed after death and before birth. So they had a unique position where they were immediately connected with the Akashic records all the time because they were guiding these souls, helping them to transition. Also, the Arcturians were set aside to be spiritual guides and spiritual guardians. Um, so they're kind of like the overseers of the whole experiment, if you want to call it that. And but they kind of even out the playing field. So you got the draconians that are mucking things up, bringing in the dark. So they're bringing in all the dark aspects, all part of this whole earth experience, or this separation from source experience that we're all being a part of right now. But the Arcturians are part of the light, obviously, and they are the ones that are guiding us through this process. They won't do the work for us, so they're never going to just say, oh, we're going to rescue you. They won't do that. But a lot of people have Arcturian guides because maybe they're not an Arcturian starseed, but they might have an Arcturian guide because they do guide all of us. So
Mm.
they guide us through our experience here on Earth.
Mhm.
And so, as an Arcturian starseed, I'm honored to be a part of that. So I'm just feeling like, obviously, I've had incarnations in a lot of systems, so I don't only claim Arcturus, but I do. I do have soul memories of Arcturus and what it was like there. And it's not really a physical reality. It might look like a physical reality, but it's not a physical reality. But it's a
Wow.
pretty amazing place. And then you wanted me to talk about the Draconians.
Yes, I
Yeah,
am very curious about this
yeah,
because, and specifically those here on Earth who are channeling the messages of Draconians, like, what role do you see that they're playing there? How do you view your role in light of what they're doing? I'm just so curious about that.
yeah. Well, I'll be the first person to say that not all draconians are evil or bad. There's some that are shifted to the light, or they're of the positive polarity. But uh, so here's the deal with draconians. So now, this was something I found out in the Akashic records. It kind of blew my mind, actually, because I always thought they came from Draco. Okay, they've been in Draco. And then I was doing a reading for somebody and I discovered this whole story behind how they ended up here. And they actually came from a different universe. So they were like the big head honchos in this universe, and they had abundant resources in that universe. And their arch enemies were these avian beings that they were constantly at war at. So they were at war with these avian beings, and uh, I think the avians just got tired of being at war with them. So they decided, they created this technology where they were able to oust these beings, these draconians, from their universe and deposited them in our universe. So we inherited somebody's problem children, so to speak. It's just like, and they got deposited into Draco, which is a very barren, not very lovely star constellation. I mean, they have a number of stars, and actually Thuban, one of their stars was Earth's North Star for a while, but which a lot of people don't know that either. But they didn't have like the abundance of resources they used to have, like in their old universe. So they decided that they wanted to conquer other systems in order to have constant access to resources, energy, enslavement, all that stuff. So they, after the Lyran Wars, they expanded out to Orion. So there was a number of stars in the Orion constellation that were strongholds for draconian beings, along with Zetas and other insectoid beings. So that was part of what they called the Orion Empire. And then once Orion shifted to Unity consciousness, these beings that didn't want to be a part of that decided to find new frontiers to conquer, and so they were starting to conquer Earth. So that's why we have a stronghold of draconian beings, and mainly like in some of the elites, like the Illuminati families, the royal families. A lot of them are descendant of these beings. They're shapeshifters. I unfortunately have the ability sometimes to see their true draconian self. Like if I'm watching TV, like some of these politicians, I'm just like, oh, there's their shape shifting.
You don't seem to be worried about this.
No, no, I'm not, because we're winning the war. I mean, and I think ever since my experience with the Arcturians, I don't feel afraid of anything. I'm not even afraid of draconians, because what are they going to do to us? We're omnipresent beings. Yeah, they could, kill us, if they wanted to do that. Uh, but honestly, I don't have fear around it. I know even if I get killed, I'm going to get processed. I'm going to go return to Arcturus. So I'll get processed. I'll have a new incarnation somewhere else. So if that's my destiny, then I'll embrace it. But I also do things to protect myself too. So it's not just, oh, I'm just going out there willy nilly, but you got to always protect yourself from negative beings, but because they are real, there's some very dark beings here, as
Mhm.
you and I both know that.
Mhm.
But yeah, interesting question, because I think a lot of people just assume that either they're from Earth or they're from Draco, and they're just all evil and mean and bad. And not all of them are evil. There's some dragon beings that are of the positive polarity. So
Mhm.
a lot of our cultures here on planet Earth, talk about dragons and their interactions with dragons.
Mhm.
They were great teachers at one time,
Mhm.
so not all of these beings are evil.
Mhm. As we wrap up here, I want people to know about your Galactic Akashic Records 6-week
Of
course,
course.
because I want
Yeah,
them to
yeah.
check that out, whether they're able to do it this September 2025 or next year. Um, what would they experience? Who is this for? How can they sign up?
Basically, it's for anybody, so it's regardless of whether you consider yourself a beginner or an advanced student. We designed the course to accommodate all levels. And we do offer it every year. So even if you take a look at it and you say, well, the timing doesn't work for me this year, don't no, not to worry. We're going to offer it again next year, probably in the spring. So and then I'm also working on an advanced Akashic course. So for those that have already graduated or want, a deeper dive into how to heal within the Akashic records, we are working on that course, which most likely we'll be offering in January of next year. But getting back to your question about what can they expect, so a lot of my course is really focused on galactic history, and the reason why I focus so much on galactic history is because when you're getting into the records, you need to recognize what it is that you're looking at when you're tapping into the galactic records. And if you don't have a frame of reference or an understanding of the history of at least our galaxy, then you're probably going to be pretty lost. You're going to be like, what am I looking at here? But if you have a basic understanding of galactic history, then when you get into the records, you'll be like, oh, yeah, I recognize that. Debbie told me that Debbie was telling us that this is likely what the Pleiades look like or what Andromeda looks like. So it just gives them that frame of reference. And so that's the first 3 weeks. And then the second 3 weeks, we really focus in just the skills on how to access the record. So we do it step by step. So we meet twice a week on Zoom. So we'll meet just for questions and answers, and then we'll also meet for practice runs. So I'll be there. You guys can practice with each other. I'll be there also, to help guide you through the process. So we have breakout rooms on Zoom, and then we have a graduation ceremony, and you'll get a certificate. So you'll get a nice certificate. that proves that you've completed the course. There are some requirements around that, but and then you can go and have your own Akashic practice, or have the Akashic reading be a supplement to your existing. So you don't have to be an Akashic reader. You could be a QHHT practitioner or a Reiki master and still use the Akashic records for your practice.
Hmm. Wonderful.
Yeah.
And so you also mentioned that you have some other courses, webinars, classes that are available on your website. And
Yeah.
so those are great. I saw classes on health for star seeds, how to navigate romantic relationships for star seeds, some wonderful resources. So
Yeah.
remind us what your website is, where people can connect with you on social media.
Yeah. So if DebbieSolaris.com is my website, just my name, .com. And like David mentioned, there's a big section on galactic history. There's a training page. There's an events page if you want to know what events I'm involved with or what I'm going to be doing next. There is a mystery school at sea cruise next year in March. So if you're dying to go to the Mediterranean with a bunch of star seeds, that might be something you might want to consider. So that's on the events page. And then there is trainings that, like David mentioned. As far as readings, unfortunately, I'm not taking new names at this time. So
But you have lots of
get on my
people.
list. Yeah. So
But you have lots of people that have been trained by you that are available on your website.
yeah. So if you want a reading, but you can't get on with me, you can go to the Akashic Readers Directory. There's, I would say, at least 50 readers on that page that was trained using my methods and can give you a really great reading. So don't discount having a reading just because you can't have one with me. I have some really awesome readers on that directory. So that's that, so there's another option for a lot of folks, just,
Wonderful.
yeah, because I am just one person. Can't.
Yeah, yeah. Debbie, thank you so much for sharing your history and your wisdom, for giving me a little mini taste of reading of what you do. So fun to see you in action in that way, and just appreciate how you're making a big impact in our world. So thank you.
Thank you, David, for this opportunity and for showcasing my work and connecting with all the folks that are connected through Awaken Magazine. Thank you again.
Thanks for listening to the Awaken Magazine podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and our other conversations, would you mind taking a moment to leave a 5-star review and maybe even a comment on Spotify or Apple Podcasts? That's one of the ways that you can give back to the show and help us reach more people. And of course, feel free to share the episode with a friend. And if you're not already on our email list, we send out an inspiring email every Monday morning full of articles and interviews. Just head on over to awakenedmagazine.com and click subscribe and join for free. Our hope is that all the resources we share will help our world continue awakening to love.